Hey, Sir Fix-A-Lot here. I'm going to show you how to change out coilover suspension on a 2006 Mazda Miata, as well as sway bars on the Mazda Miata. So what I've got here are the MazdaSpeed coilovers for the Miata. These are about $1,600 to $1,700 a set, depending on where you buy them. And this procedure is going to apply to basically any coilovers you want to put on your NC Miata. I've also got here the Progress Technology sway bars and the Racing Beat end links that you're going to need. Since the car is being lowered, we're going to change the end links to a shorter end link on the sway bars, and you're going to want to set those once the car is back on the ground. First things first, you want to get the car up off the ground. That means all four wheels, remove the wheels and so that you have the brake calipers exposed, as well as the suspension exposed. First things first, you want to get the car up off the ground. That means all four wheels, remove the wheels and so that you have the brake calipers exposed, as well as the suspension exposed. Okay, first things first, you're going to want to remove this crossbar here. So you're going to have to do these two bolts here, and there's a couple other ones further up here that need to be removed too. So we're going to have to remove the ABS wheel sensor, which is located here. It has a 10mm bolt here and then a 10mm bolt that's underneath that's going to disconnect this whole unit. The other thing that we're going to do is on the brake line here, there's a bolt that holds kind of this rubberized brake line. You have to remove that because we're gonna disconnect this A-arm here and then bring it back as we drop the suspension. So this is looking at the front. First things first, you want to get the car up off the ground. That means all four wheels, remove the wheels and so that you have the brake calipers exposed, as well as the suspension exposed. Okay, first things first, you're going to want to remove this crossbar here. So you're going to have to do these two bolts here, and there's a couple other ones further up here that need to be removed too. So we're going to have to remove the ABS wheel sensor, which is located here. It has a 10mm bolt here and then a 10mm bolt that's underneath that's going to disconnect this whole unit. The other thing that we're going to do is on the brake line here, there's a bolt that holds kind of this rubberized brake line. You have to remove that because we're gonna disconnect this A-arm here and then bring it back as we drop the suspension. So this is looking at the front. To remove the front suspension, we're going to remove these three nuts right here, and it'll cause the suspension to drop out. The other thing that you have to do is the A-arm here. You have to disconnect using 17mm wrench the two top A-arm bolts and then the sway bar bracket that's below down here. You have to remove that sway bar link off the lower control arm, and then that'll cause the entire unit basically to swing out. And then if you disconnect the lower connection down here for the strut, you should be able to pull the strut out up through the top A-arm. Alright, you can see we've got the upper A-arm completely disconnected, and then the bolt here for the lower control arm is pretty much disconnected, and now I'm going to drop out the top 3 bolts for the strut, and the whole unit should drop down, and then you should be able to pull this coilover straight out through the A-arm. Alright, here is the coilover installed. You just have to make sure that the coilover is assembled properly, especially on the top pieces up here. There's instructions with the kit, but you have the spring and then the helper spring up on top. You're using some of the OE originally supplied parts, and you have the adapter, which you can see right up here, this aluminum adapter. Alright, for the rear panel, you're going to want to remove these small rivets. This will remove all the panels in the rear trunk, and then you remove the fuel filler shield, this one here with 10mm, with a 10mm socket. And then you go back here, and there are 2 14mm bolts here. There's, nuts, and there's one back here, and those are the ones that you disconnect, and once those disconnect, the suspension will drop. When removing the stock pieces to the coilovers, you don't want to take these springs apart or the coilovers apart without first using something like this, like spring compressors. For the rears, you only have to basically compress them about an inch, inch and a half. But for the fronts, you've got to compress them quite a bit. It's about 3 to 4 inches, because the top of the strut actually is somewhere around this location right here. So you've got to compress it more than this distance here in order to safely remove the 17mm nut at the top. And once you get it all compressed, then you can use an impact wrench to remove the bolt. Now that's only if you're using MazdaSpeed coilovers, which require you to use the top hats from the OE units. There are other coilovers that don't require you to do that, and then you don't have to take apart the old one at all. Now from below, there's 3 things that you're going to detach. One is the sway bar link, which has already been detached here. Then on this bar here, this rear link bar, you're going to want to detach it up here at the top towards the subframe. And then finally, the suspension or the strut, the coilover bottom bolt, you remove that, and then the whole unit should drop straight out. The rear suspension now is installed, and the diameter of the spring is a lot narrower than the stock one, so this is a lot easier to put in. You can go ahead and tighten up the 2 bolts plus the one that the 2 nuts up on top, and then the bolt that comes up here for the strut housing. You can tighten those up, but you don't want to tighten up the lower bolt just yet, and nor do you want to tighten up the control arm bolt here either. You want to do that once the car is lowered on the ground. So I'm going to move to the sway bars in a second, but I want to show you a safety thing first on the coilovers. Here's the rear sway bar removed. Has the stock one and has the new Progress Technologies one. I've already installed one sway bar link here. To put this together, you just take the stud, you rotate this in on each side, and nut on each side, like that. And you just take the sway bar link, and the minimum that you want to turn it is 5 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I usually go 6, 7 or so on each side in order to ensure that it's on, and you can adjust it later if you want it longer or shorter. You can go 8, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so once this is installed, then you install. The Racing Beat kit's a little bit short on washers, so I had to get extra ones. But you thread one on, you put it in, thread the other one on, and then tighten it with the 17mm bolt. And basically, you want this tightened to a point where it's fairly stiff, but not so that you can't rotate it. The bushing is open on one end. Use the lubricant that they provide you. Put it inside the center, kind of move it around, and then put it in the same location, approximately the same location where the stock one was. That's why I've got them right next to each other. And then you attach the bracket and you attach it back up with the original hardware. The sway bar, the aftermarket sway bar, is not an easy one to install. The old sway bar, the original one, you're going to want to pull out from left to right. So pull it out from the right side of the vehicle, and then installing the aftermarket sway bar, which has slightly longer ends, you want to push it in from the left side of the vehicle. And what's going to happen is you're going to have the sway bar ends basically pointing up, kind of diagonal in this direction as you push it through, and then you're going to have to rotate it back around, clearing the steering rod here. So that tie rod, the only way you're going to be able to clear it is if you still have your suspension disconnected, the top A-arm as well as the strut. You can then push everything down, rotate the sway bar around, and then you'll be able to hook up your ends to it.